Hello, Internet, and welcome to a Wednesday Serial Report. So, I want to talk about Denver Comic Con that I just got back from. And it's basically, I have notes from a few signings, it's a lot of haul, and talk a bit about the panels I did bother to attend. But in brief, once I was in the con, it was good, but like you might have seen on Twitter, I had some problems getting in, and there was definitely some organizational issues all throughout the con, which at this point is starting to be a little dicey. Yeah, I'll touch on that a little more, but overall a fun time, but I felt like it was a bit of fun despite itself, because I was really going to hang with some friends, and we did pick up a lot of comics. And that's cool. There's definitely some stuff with the panels and waiting though that meant it wasn't quite where it needed to be. So I'm gonna break this up more by artifact than time, I guess, just to make it more lucid. I'm gonna hit on one of the lighter ones first, and that's signatures, and kind of what happened there. I was able to get a Ramos signature on his first Spider-Man book, which was cool, but it was $5 a signature, which is annoying, and I didn't know that. But I walked up to the table, I was already committed, pulled out the book, they're like, hey, it's $5 a signature, whatever, and I was like, I'm this far already. But I figured, if I'm paying for a signature, maybe there'd be a little more something. No, Ramos's handler talked to me, but I said to Ramos, like, hey, ever since you've been on the book, I love the energy, I like the positivity it brings. It makes the book always fun and interesting, and I feel like brings the energy of the book more to what I think a lot of people show up for. And he was just, okay, thanks. And his handler was talking to me about some guy who hadn't read this Big Time arc, but read, like, Spider Island and all this other stuff. He's like, how'd you not read Big Time arc? And I'm like, different people come in at different points. I don't know, but yeah, you totally should read it. So that was weird. I was hoping to get both of these issues signed, but I was going to pay another $5. So that was a bit of a disappointment. I understand. I've heard that actually someone on Reddit posted about Ramos just being the worst, and I don't know. It's his second language. He's not the most personal person, but he has a handler to kind of counteract that. What's kind of funny to me, though, is I definitely saw bigger groups and bigger crowds around a lot of people, and he got about as much attention as some of the bigger local artists. So I guess he's not a huge draw, but that was interesting. We didn't bring anything to get signed, but my girlfriend picked up this art of Bob McWall, co-creator of some of the New Mutants, did a lot of good old school Marvel work. It's a beautiful sketchbook. God, look at that. Yeah, he seemed like a nice guy. We didn't talk to him too long. Then I got Matteo Scalera to sign his Batman. You can barely see the little silver there. The flare, not that he did anything wrong. Which was cool. He was totally cool. The only thing there was he was sitting at a table with a bunch of other artists under some art company banner, which was fine, but they didn't have it designated, like, who is who, and we didn't know what the hell he looked like. So we had to, like, try to go to a corner and get some internet connection, be like, oh, he's the guy with the beard. Okay. So we could go and not hand the comic to the wrong person, because we didn't want to do that. But, that's why normally there's little stands where you sit at a booth with just your name. But they had, like, 4 relatively big artists, and it was kind of an odd point. Since we're here too, I saw a little ad for The Devil's Panties webcomic that's supposed to be going. Just da-da-da.com. Just looks like a cool, nerd webcomic. Nothing new, but seems like it'd be fun to check out. Oh, and there's more in here, I know, but some of you may have heard me have said some stuff about Fred Van Lente in the past. And in retrospect, I was just passing by his booth and we just kind of caught eyes. I was just like, hey man, I love your more recent work and stuff. And, I've been reading since said a couple things I could remember, like comic book history, and God, I remembered some Avengers title in the moment. And he was like, "Oh yeah, man, thanks." And we just got to talking, and I picked up a Conan book, partially because I was there and I was like, "Oh God," but also because he was being super friendly. We got into this kind of conversation, and also as Conan, and I know I need to be reading some Conan to catch up with Damien, so I was like, "Well, fuck it." Um, but he gave me this beer coaster, which is a cool way to promote something for The Dead Comedians, which is his first prose novel coming out. So I might actually bother to read it. I don't know. It actually sounds pretty interesting. Yeah, and I saw him on a couple panels. He seems like a really cool guy. I remember this was at a convention way back. I was buying comic book history, and I was trying to ask him like where to buy something else to be like get this, if there was a way to do it directly to get him those money. He's like, no, just buy it at a bookstore or whatever, whatever. But the way he said it was just like, whatever, kid, just buy it wherever. And it just hit me the wrong way. But I think looking back, you might have been him trying to be funny or just came off wrong. You talk to 500 people in a day. Maybe it doesn't always come out right. So I don't know. It was just one of those moments where I realized like maybe some of the things I viewed as negative experiences, I was maybe reading a little into something or another, and you just gotta give these people a little bit of slack here and there. Just try to enjoy the moment, enjoy the work, enjoy stuff. Be positive, man. So yeah, that was that section. Then we got some art. This is Frank Cho. This is Frank Cho, and this was the one I picked out of Frank Cho that I thought those were pretty cool. Got this Wonder Woman sketch, and then part of this whole Stalker imprint, which is big about being, African centric and, people of color and all that, which is cool and fine, purposely coming from a different thing. But there's a trade I'll show you later. It looks really intricate, really interesting. I kind of can't wait to dig into it. But they got some stuff, and I'm going to be curious to check that out. But we got this print from them. Does it say the artist? Spider's Prayer. The artist's name is not on it. That's a misstep. And then for a friend, that was bought. We actually did end up going to a Supernatural panel, and yeah. So, art, man. Comics is a lot of art. Then I actually read a couple books over the weekend. I'm going to quickly talk about those to just add another section because I want to. On the way up, I read this, something that I bought for Johnny DaCosta years ago, and I ended up with a cheap copy before the con, but I was reading on the way up. The Red Hood Lost Days. This is very reminiscent of a Spider-Man bit with Ben Reilly as like on a biker, and you never see like the Spider-Man costume or anything, but he's just like this gruff hero guy that goes around doing stuff, and it's kind of pointless. This has more point to the mythos and whatnot, but it's bizarre. For the first chunk, Jason, was just killed, and then he's being trained with the League, and then there's this whole thing with Talia loving Batman, but raising him, and then he wants to get back at Batman. There's a lot of weirdness there. He comes around to almost killing Batman, but doesn't want to do it because it won't be personal enough, basically. And there's a whole bunch of stuff, and it leads up to the initial Red Hood storyline Jen Woodick did, but this was to try to build it up a little bit, which for me was a little disappointing because I didn't realize I wasn't going to get into that. So yeah, I don't know. There's an interesting little trade. If you do really love Red Hood, you gotta read this. It's one of the few things that's just him. But what was really cool was at the meat of this book, there was a lot of Talia trying to train up Jason on the sort of skills Batman would have left behind, some of the lack of viciousness or poisoning people, actual lethal stuff. And Jace was doing that, but then he'd end up killing most of the teachers of that because he found out they were really despicable people despite whatever moral compass he was working at the time. So he'd kind of acquire the skills and then eliminate them. And I thought that was a cool twist, and then just building on this idea that he's going to help, but he's going to help and take out these people who he views as kind of subhuman. You can kind of see the problem, but you can also see the people as taken out. You're like, eh. Like, it's very Punisher-esque, but it's set in a DC, Gotham realm. So, despite being a globe-trotting sort of thing, which was cool too. So, I don't know, actually, like, the meat of the idea of the Red Hood coming through here in a way, I don't think he comes through normally in a Batman comic, because the absence of Batman, for the most part, actually, I think, let this sing stronger, which is kind of how I feel about most Bat Mythos things. Get Batman out, and it's instantly more interesting. And then I bought a book from a local vendor there, Samuel Tier. This is a Dark Horse book. Dark Horse, guys. They publish more than Mignola. Not if there's anything wrong with Mignola, dear Lord, he's keeping them afloat. But this was a cool book. I'm not going to say, 10 out of 10 or anything. I think there's a couple missteps in here. But Vita Assembly Required is awesome. The art is pretty. This is a pretty book. I'm trying to get you at least a page to describe. I think there's a lot of detail here. There's a few panels you'll see that do kind of have the no background thing, but I think at that point there's enough emotion in it. Like, most panels have background and setting, which is something I've been noticing and appreciating more. There's a lot of cool stuff. So the idea is there's this little girl who essentially gets lost in this factory. It's part of some weird dystopian future thing. And this factory is supposed to have childcare things, but she's lost, and then she's effectively raised by some of the machines trying to help out. And there's these 3 rules, and by helping her, they're upholding Rule 1 by breaking Rule 3. And that's a problem. But she learns from them, she learns how to help, but she also learns language from them, so she's able to kind of chirp and beep, or however it's supposed to be interpreted. And that's interpreted in the comic by her using not these emojis necessarily, but the idea of emojis. It's symbols to make language, which I think is really cool. And they do that for certain parts, and it makes it so that there's this idea of communication, but it's kind of the idea of a silent comic at the same time. But there is dialogue too, and there's a decent balance between it. But she's running around, but for so long running around, and then there's the lore of all this setup that I honestly thought she was kind of post the factory, and she was kind of this lost child because some disaster happened. She was kind of forgotten as everybody had abandoned the factory. That is not the case. There are people still working the factory. That society is still running, but you don't find that until you're about halfway through the book. So that was a turn that kind of threw me off. But it was interesting for that. But also there's this gremlin in the factory who's trying to destroy things as the assembly's going, and she ends up having this battle of conscience trying to find her way between the gremlin and the robots. This was kind of pitched to me as an all-ages comic, which reading it, there's nothing overblown, like, it's fine. I think all ages might be pushing it, because when I say some language, I don't mean cursing. I mean, the vending machine supplied nourishment is just a random thing I threw to. I think the vocabulary is just a notch above all ages. Like, I don't think kids learning to read could pick this one up, but I think if they're improving reading or just looking for something to read, like, I don't think you have to worry about the age requirement besides, like, if they're coming at you every page with what's this word mean, it would probably be too much for them at that point. That's the only thing I could see there. But I mean, younger readers definitely. But that was the thing, is as I was reading it, I'm 30, I don't care, and man, it was just a fun book. Like, I didn't really know what to expect, and it just kind of kept surprising me, and I kept liking it. Like I said, there's that one little bit that really kind of threw me out. But what was also really cool is each chapter has these kind of prose pages, but I mean, it's only a couple of paragraphs, but there's little light art here. But it speaks to events in the book, but a memo that would be sent out to most people there, and then how the companies interpreting it, which was a way to build in perspective and have world building and just maybe advance the plot a tick in this very clever churn. Yeah. If you're looking for a different kind of book and you run across this, please pick this up. Yeah, but I was able to speak to the same little tier guy who wrote it. Awesome dude. He's just loves comics and is trying to make his own and do stuff. And I think a lot of times you'll hear people talk about like manga inspired, or there's more pull from the Orient with the how they're doing stuff. Not that anyone says Orient anymore, but I did. But this, I think, has a bit more of a European feel, if nothing else, because of the mechanics of it all. When I think of a deeply mechanical book where you see factories and so many lines and whatnot, it just naturally trends European in my mind for whatever reason for the art. Because when I think of that Italian painterly stuff, there's a lot of tubes and wires and stuff. But I mean, not that you don't see that in like Ghost in the Shell, so I don't know why, but no, there you go. So now I want to talk a bit more about the cons. So, getting in was a pain. They only had one entrance open. I found out it's because a hydroponics convention was supposed to be happening on the other side. There also might have been a little person midget sort of mini convention going on in the area, because there was a lot of them. And they weren't like all nerded up, so it wasn't just like there's a huge nerd segment in Denver that happens to be midgets or something. Like, there's clearly something going on there, but neither really here nor there, but interesting. But they only had one entrance to the convention center open for us to do, which they could have easily allowed a little more. And Saturday to get in, the line was enormous. It took us over an hour to get in, well over an hour, at least 90 minutes. And that's a problem. And I just, none of the other cons I've been to have had that kind of a problem. And I honestly think the early panels that day were up. Because I don't know how, like, it was luck of the draw for who was in and interested at that point, unless it was some of the main stuff. And that was the other thing, too, is they had a lot of celebrities. They had a lot of sci-fi people. They also had a lot of authors there, which I don't really have a problem with, but it did kind of edge even more to the point where there was some, and a notable chunk, and I've talked about a chunk of them already, but there wasn't a ton of comic book talent there. Every other comic book convention I've been to, the exception of maybe Kansas one year, because that's just so much smaller, has had more comic talent. But even the Kansas one was just because that's who they could get, you know. I mean, but yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's a ton of like, there's Doctor Who people there, there's Nathan Fillion there, there's other Buffy people there, there was Weird Al there, Kevin Conroy. They had the entire voice cast of the old Justice League cartoon, which was interesting, but I didn't go see any of it because voice actors kind of bore me at this point. So, what did I bother to see? I skipped the how do you get into comics panels as much as I could, because I've just heard those sort of things at this point, and I think they can be interesting, but not as much for me. I went to a panel that sounded, if it stuck to the theme more, I think it would have been more interesting, but it was called Marvel Then and Now. They had a newer creator there, Alfina Martinez. She's, you know, a woman of color, and she's had a long career. She's done a lot of good work, and she apparently hasn't gotten as much credit as she deserves, as in she was telling us that she had to ghostwrite for years until they started putting her name on some things, which to me, I still get blown away that I hear about that. Like, how does that work? I mean, how would you feel? I mean, A, if you're writing and you're doing this for this company, you feel you want the work. Of course, you want your name to your work. But more to the other end of that, like if you're ghostwriting to write for another writer, if you're writing and you have a relatively big name, would you want a book that maybe isn't up to your par, isn't in your vein, attached to your name? I think that would cut negatively on both ways. So I just don't understand the need for it. But she was talking about that, and I thought that was relatively interesting. There's a couple other people there I can't really remember, nor do I want to bother to look them up. But there's an old, when I say old, I mean I think he's 90-something, creator Alan Bellman, who was one of the early artists on Captain America, you know, after Jack Kirby and whatnot, and they needed to have someone do some work. And he told this tale, and I've heard him tell it before, and it's somewhat interesting. You know, there was an ad in the paper, and he said, you know, I'll go tomorrow, get my stuff together, and his dad said, no, you're going today. So he got on the train and went down, and he ended up getting hired, basically, you know. Act now, act fast, listen to your parents, good parable. He also came in, and, you know, there's an older guy who was mumbling in the mic, we couldn't hear him for like 5 minutes. Athena talked for a bit, and he started hobbling up, and you're thinking, oh god, this poor man, they're trotting him out to do this. He could drop dead any minute. But then he grabs the mic. Who am I? I'm Alan Bellman, and I was born and raised an alcoholic. No, seriously. And you're like, oh my god, okay, the man has more fire than anyone else on stage. Never mind. Okay. He just, he had that presence, he had the stories, but he did try to stop himself, say, you know, I could go on for hours, but let's let some of the other people speak. So he was very present in that. He did take a little more time, but I also feel like the announcers try to drag a little more out of everyone else, so can't really blame him. But then, halfway through, apropos of fucking nothing, dude's like, I just want to say this from the bottom of my heart, not a political statement, but ladies and gentlemen, you need to give the man a chance. We need to make America great again. And I thought, holy fuck. So it took a few minutes after people who just stood up and left, and then I stood up and left, because what the fuck? Like, I get people are Trump supporters, and here's a guy in his 90s supporting Trump. I guess it, but I mean, the fact it was a Captain America artist kind of hurt a little. But, God, not the time nor place for that at all. Was kind of the bigger problem. Also, the other reason I left was because if I wanted to get into the similar style panel, but for DC Comics, I basically had to leave at that time to get in line so that I could get in for the next panel. And at that point, no one else was saying something. You could also see Athena go, oh my god. And until she was on the other side of that, unshockingly. So, yeah, that was a moment. I have to be honest, listening to the DC Comics then and now, they just had a few artists on stage. They just kind of talked about the industry a little bit. Nothing super exciting. I learned a little bit, though, that DC doesn't necessarily hand to every one of their artists a scripted amount for what like has to be on the Batman costume, what Harley has to be. They just said, you know, most of these characters have decades of history that you crib from, and editorial let you know if you've gone too far, and you're just sticking to those notes mostly. So it wasn't as rigid as I was led to believe in the past, which I know I've heard other artists talk about the fact that they had these documents that they had to adhere to for the different hero stuff. So that was interesting. Another panel I went to today was called Reach, Don't Preach, Writing Stories with a Message. Alan Brooks, who's someone I know, who's a great guy, one of the creators of The Burning Metronome, which is a comic that's getting a ton of press around here. They finally have like a big old book that they've released. If you can find a way to get a hold of it, please do. It's something interesting, I feel. Though I've only read the first issue, I haven't read the full trade yet, so, yeah, but I've read this guy's work for years. It's usually pretty darn good. He was moderating. Fred Van Lente, they had a sci-fi writer, and a couple other more local creators. The guy, I am forgetting his name, but Princess did that, was on there too. They were talking about, you know, how to write without going too far. It ended up not being so much on that topic, but being like, you gotta write true to your character, otherwise things are gonna go weird. They brought up Ayn Rand as an example of doing that and not letting your message overtake your comic, but let the characters speak to their messages at the points at which it would make sense, and not to diatribe too much at each other. but to make sure it held to a plot within a story. Which I think is true, but I've definitely seen some comics go about things in some different ways. Also, to the Ayn Randian point, I couldn't really bring it up, but when you have a character like Mr. A, who's completely about that, and that is all the character is, and there's stupid little moral tales that the villains bring up. I mean, that's kind of their point, but the point is Mr. A doesn't have any real character. He's just here to be like, this is wrong, ha! Karate chop and done. So, I don't know. Different takes to that idea, I guess, but it was an interesting thing, I think, to wonder about for a moment. Another panel we went to, first one today, and it was a bummer, was Wonder Woman comics through the years. And I'd like to point out that there was at least 3 Wonder Woman panels throughout this con, and the only Wonder Woman creators were there, and they're the comic creators behind the like Bionic Woman, Wonder Woman stuff, or the Wonder Woman comic that's based on the old TV show. That's their thing. Which was fine. If they wanted to talk about that more, that would be fine. But what they ended up talking about was mostly the movie, and then about how the old TV show affected them. So here I am trying to hear about Wonder Woman comics, and they're talking about Wonder Woman only multimedia, not really about the comics at all. And it was boring. Not much else to be said about that. What else do we do? Oh, Saturday opening up, and this was incredible. There was a nerd poetry slam where, like, they'd have a little bit of trivia, and then in a bigger venue, that would mean whoever got their trivia question right would be able to read their poem. Because the attendance they had and how they set it up, everybody was able to read their poem. There was someone who did something about Hamlet, which was a little, but that was fine, and it was interesting. There was someone who did one about Sailor Moon, and it was really cool. All of them were really cool. Some guy did about Wakanda, you know, Black Panther, all that. Awesome. What else was there? Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and this one girl just got up there and was like, Comic-Con was her thing, just talking about the unification of everything. It was just really, you know, good way to start your day there, especially if you just had your most negative moment with there to kind of get you back going. That was really something. It was really cool. And then also for Crystal, we weren't doing anything else at the time. We went to the Supernatural panel, which ended up just being them asking fans trivia questions and giving away little gifts or whatever in a costume contest. It was fine, but there wasn't really anything to be had there. But killed some time doing that. And then, of course, you know, drinking, all that nonsense. Now is just crass commercialism. What the hell did we buy? Actually, most of this was Crystal, but just thought I'd run through it. So, the artist of the new Darkwing Duck comic was there. Crystal got a couple volumes, got him signed. We didn't actually get to meet the creator of Darkwing Duck because he was there, but not there. Like I said, Brooks, here, Stackenberg, the Burning Metronome. Got this thing. Looking forward to digging through this. They got some big names on the quote box back here. Jim Shooter, Mike Barron. I have a feeling this is going to get around. Should be interesting. S1 Comics. Stuff. It's about a teddy bear and his boy. I don't know. Looks cool. Prince Senseless, we got some Whitley. Just a few volumes of this. We had some already. Relatively kid-friendly. This is aimed at younger girls, but could be interesting book to check out. Yeah, so here's some from that Stranger Press they were talking about. Here's one called Desu, or Dusu. I'm going to assume my pronunciation for all this is wrong. African pronunciation is something I am not awful at. Niobe. Yeah, but I mean, like, look at these pages. It's a little, you know, It's a little Photoshoppy, but it should be interesting. Then the Untamed was kind of their big one that they're like, oh my god, just check this out. There's just supposed to be some pages. That's too dark to really show. But like here, it definitely has that Photoshoppy look again, but it looks fascinating. I heard there's a lot of symmetry in the book, and it's supposed to be one of those ones that you read more, you'll get more out of it. That's part of how they were selling it, but the girl behind the counter is totally into it, totally excited about it. Yeah, should be interesting. Even if it's not as good as she hyped it up to be, it should be interesting. Then someone who's friend of a friend, whatever. Sean Tiffany, Oil Can Drive's coming out. If you haven't, Oil Can Drive is fun. His first published work that kind of died on the vine, Exit 6, is more of a book than a comic, but he kind of splices some of the pages of Exit 6 together with prose. But it's easy breezy reading, but you can get a sense for his style. The guy is a great artist. There's a lot of pages in here of other people telling you that, which... but so far it's been an interesting read. Yeah, so if following an artist's journey is kind of your sort of thing, that one would totally be worth picking up. You'll definitely have a moment there. Alright, now to just shit we got. Chris wanted to pick up this Big Trouble in Little China because we're at Fred Berlanti's booth. Outcast Volume 3. Oh my god, I need a better way to do this. Hexed. Lazarus 4, because guess we didn't have Lazarus 4. God, Rat Queens. Garbage in my house. I don't know how I feel about that. Mythic. This was pretty banged up. A lot of the trades we got, there was a few we found like $5 trades, whatever, that was cool. A lot of them were half off at this one booth, but he just had the selection, and there's just a lot of cool stuff there. We were kind of, in the moment. Black Magic. I remember a few guys talking about this one, and yeah, that's why. Headlopper. I wanted to wait for the trade on this one, so I did, and boom, here it is. We'll see if I ever read it. Monstrous, because she really wanted it, and then, I don't know why, she's like, I love Revival. I don't think she's read Revival yet, but boom, Revival Volume 3. Apparently we have Volume 2. Who knew? I didn't. That's who. Alright, oh, here we go. Like I said, Conan, Which Shall Be Born. This is supposed to be like the novel adaptation Lenti did. Looking forward to doing that. Oh, we got some BPRD, Hell on Earth, volumes 1, 2, and 3 for when I finally catch up on BPRD. So, look forward to me telling you about that in like 10 years. Oh, I found a couple of Spawn trades that I didn't have. New Beginnings and Endgame. So, hooray. Oh, I got the Ed Brubaker Batman Pack Volume 2. Now if I can find Volume 1, I don't know if that's necessary really, but after reading Gotham Central, that's what really prompted me to want to read that. For years, I've been wanting to find and read because of the passion behind the project, Noble Causes. I got the first trade, and then I did a little digging later. Some of the later volumes are impossible to find, so I don't know what I'm going to do here with this, if I like it. We'll see. I'll at least read this before diving into another goddamn comic collecting adventure. Sex Criminals Volume 2, because we didn't have that. And then I finally found a copy of the Gail Simone Red Sonja volume. Can finally read that. Hooray. We got a Brubaker Uncanny X-Men because it was cheap, I guess. I don't have excuses for all these guys. Oh, Black Panther Volume 3. We got Volume 1 recently, which means we were missing Volume 2. During the Mystery by Kieran Gillian that's beat up. I don't know, we have the issues. I don't know why we need to buy this. Oh, Moon Knight. She's been really big on Moon Knight lately. Yeah. Oh my god, I saw this, then we had to get it. Batman Bride of the Demon. This is an old, like, oversized print. It's like a storybook, and it's Mike W. Barr, the creator of Batman Year 2, the single greatest Batman author of all time. Yeah, we got this. We got a buttload of Secret 6 because we got a buttload of Secret 6. That's how these things go. The Amazing Spider-Man Presents Jackpot. I think I actually skipped this when it came out, so yeah. Because Jackpot. We got the Gamora collection because we got the Drax collection, I guess. And we're riding that train. Oh, should be fun. I actually read a little bit of this already, but not a lot. Captain America and the Falcon, which was a mini that was put together by Christopher Priest. Some of the art in this is hilariously bad. Yeah, this should be a fun one. So your Black Widow. Oh my god, we got this Rogue trade that, I wonder if you can see it. The spine is so jacked on this one. I don't know what the hell. So, yeah. Then we got the Trial Gambit thing, which this is around Uncanny X-Men 350, which this blew my mind when I was a kid. I read that issue I don't know how many times. Made me love Gambit, and it turns out that's like one of his few big stories, actually. Marvel's Eye of the Camera. I've been waiting to get this for cheap. Got it for cheap. This was painful. I've been, ever since last year at Rose City, Dave and I heard Matt Fraction speak, and Fabio Moon even, a little bit, about Casanova. Wish I had this then, but it made me want to read Casanova, but I've never really done it. But this is a beautiful collection. This hardback looks wonderful. I want to get volume 1 like this, and then continuing, but they didn't have volume 1 nowhere at the Ding Con, but they had this volume 2 for half off, and it's pristine. It's still, I mean, shrink wrap, maybe it was re-shrink wrap. That's a thing that happens. But, I mean, a white hardback, if there's some wear and tear, you'll see it on the exterior unless something fucked up happens. So, yeah. I was ecstatic. The lady wanted to read some Grell Green Arrow. I've been meaning to do it forever. Boom. We got a Tony S. Daniel Deathstroke because she doesn't know what quality is sometimes. Look at this mug. Let me tell you. The old Birds of Prey collection, an old Nightwing collection. I have these things. I don't know why we're buying them again. A couple Harley Quinn trades from the good old days. I'm excited for it. We don't own these, so that's good. And then she wanted some new 52 Catwoman, so we have, God, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So, I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know. But we got all that shiz. So, yeah. That's pretty much the con. God, I hope that holds it up. Hope to talk to y'all soon. Got some comics to read. If any of those sparked your interest, let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe if you haven't before. If you haven't, please tell me how you found this channel. because I think that's impossible anymore. Yep. Bye.